As a college professor, I am often told by my university's accessibility department to provide such test-taking accommodations to certain students. Every time I am told to provide the same two accommodations, extended time and a quiet test-taking location. These accommodations never change. Even the length of the extended time does not change. It is always 1.5 times longer than the time given to other students. It is never 1.25 times longer or 2 times longer, but 1.5 times longer. They do not tell me the student's diagnosis or the test-taking issues the student has had in the past. I am just told to give some generic accommodations. The students getting these test-taking accommodations are obviously classified under the same category by the accessibility department, obviously because they all have the same diagnosis. In a sense, all these students are defined by the diagnosis they share in common, and there is no need to know or understand them as individuals because they are assumed to have the same needs as long as they have the same diagnosis. As this example shows, the domain has become very legalistic, full of documentations, formulas, quantitative measures, or explicit indicators like 1.5 times longer time to complete a test or wheelchair ramps. As long as an organization like a school or a company has these tangible measures or indicators in place, it is considered compliant with disability laws, and it can claim to be inclusive. But what if you have a company building full of elaborate ramps and accessible bathrooms that shine, but the handicapped employees are treated miserably in other ways? For example, what if people are complaining about the space the wheelchair is occupying and are pushing it away to increase the space around them, without even asking the person sitting on the wheelchair? Or what if people are treating the wheelchair as a public object and leaning on it or using its bag to hold their own belongings? In that sense, a sole focus on tangible measures like wheelchair ramps represent a box-checking mentality, which is doing things not for their inherent value or importance, but for the sake of appearances. This box-checking mentality is similar to the concept of perverse incentives in economics. According to this concept, when a measure that is designed to monitor the progress toward an objective becomes the objective itself, it starts being an impediment to achieving that objective. Perverse incentives are often designed to achieve short-term goals, but in the long run, they lead to bigger problems or undermine the original objectives. The name perverse incentive was coined by economist Horst Siebert based on an anecdote taken from the British Raj. The British government, concerned about the number of venomous cobras in Delhi, offered a bounty for every dead cobra. Initially, this was a successful strategy. Large numbers of snakes were killed for the reward. Eventually, however, people began to breed cobras for the income. When the government became aware of this, the reward program was scrapped. The cobra breeders set their snakes free, leading to an overall increase in the wild cobra population. Similarly, in 1902, in Hanoi, Vietnam, when under French colonial rule, the colonial government created a bounty program that paid a reward for each rat killed. To collect the bounty, people would need to provide the severed tail of a rat. Colonial officials, however, began noticing rats in Hanoi with no tails. The Vietnamese rat catchers would capture rats, sever their tails, then release them back into the sewers so that they could produce more rats. Similarly, in Race to the Top, an Obama administration program, and in the No Child Left Behind Act, enacted during the George W. Bush administration, standardized test scores that were meant to measure student learning, which was the original objective of these programs, became the objective itself, and led to issues such as teaching to the test or outright cheating. In the same sense, all the disability laws and special education laws that are meant for improving the performance and well-being of the people they are written for do not really serve their purpose. The formulas that these legislations prescribe ended up becoming the objectives themselves. You can compare this to cooking a dish based on a recipe, where you follow the recipe to the letter, with precise measurements. But that is not always enough. Sometimes you need to have an understanding of the ingredients. For example, suppose the kind of beans you have turn out to be much harder than average beans. So you have to simmer them much longer than the time prescribed by the recipe to achieve the desired texture. Similarly, some dishes like risotto and sautés require constant monitoring and precise timing, which makes the cook's subjective judgment and sensory evaluation more important than precise measurements. When making such dishes, cooks cannot strictly follow a recipe, but have to adapt and adjust based on the situation. In that sense, a chef's judgment and sensory evaluation in cooking is similar to good faith in the treatment of people with disabilities. Is the real reason why you give accommodations to disabled employees is to improve their performance and well-being? Or are you just checking boxes and make a show of compliance with disability laws? Legislation offers some protection and support to disabled people, but protection alone is not sufficient. It is like what Martin Luther King said about changing legislation versus changing the heart. He said you can't legislate integration, but you can legislate desegregation. The law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. The law cannot make a man love me, but it can restrain him from lynching me. And I think that's pretty important also. And so that while legislation may not change the hearts of men, it does change the habits of men. In that sense, changing legislation is only half the story. The other half is changing hearts. And that is where we are now. We are only halfway through in the integration of non-conforming people into mainstream society.